I'm JD, and I moved from Alaska to Portugal after I paid $15,000 to buy this old house that has sat empty for years. Now I'm in the process of renovating it on a budget in order to return it to its former glory and welcoming you on the DIY journey. Hey, we're back in the house doing renovation stuff finally. Since it's been a minute, I figured I'd do a little recap of the room. So currently still working on the small bedroom. It's the room that had the worst damage. The gutter was full, and so when it would rain hard, it would overflow into the inside, and the water would run down behind the plaster, and so it was all in really bad shape. And so I tore all the old plaster off, and behind the plaster, I found out that the plumbing was embedded in the wall in concrete for some reason, which was preventing the moisture in the wall from like dissipating properly. So it was kind of just holding moisture, which wasn't good for the wall either. So I tore all that out and took out the old pipes, which the old pipes were galvanized, which has a lifespan of about 60 years or so, which this was definitely that old, if not older. And the new plumbing I'll do above the ceiling, so it'll be easier to access if it needs repairs or anything like that. And since the wall is an earthen wall, I just filled in all the kind of like gaps and holes and all the place where I dug out the pipe. I just filled that in with clay, and then on this wall I decided I'll try a clay mortar and see how that works. And for the side walls, I chipped off all the loose plaster and kind of cleared away like nail holes and stuff. And I'll just redo this with lime plaster like is already there. So some stuff I didn't film because there wasn't really a good angle to put the camera to be able to see stuff was where I replaced these ceiling beams because of all the moisture. Where they connected into the wall, they were all rotted. So I got some new just eucalyptus logs, which is just what the beams are. So I just cut off the rotted part and connected in the new ones. And you can see I just bolted them in place. And then what I did mean to film but was kind of in the zone and forgot was where the pipes came through the wall from the kitchen. Added bricks to the holes and then sealed it in with some mortar, and then I also mortared in the beams at the top of the ceiling as well. So because of the weight of the beams that weren't connected to the wall anymore, the ceiling was bowed down in the center, so I added this support to hopefully straighten it out. And since the ceiling panels are probably 75 years old or more, they're pretty fragile, so I wetted the wood down so it'd be a little more flexible and wouldn't snap. So hopefully it'll dry and set flat. And so I'll just wait for the mortar to be nice and set before I take this off and see how well it actually worked. So hopefully that's enough of a recap. It's pretty straightforward. The clay is still drying out from being a liquid when I strained out the rocks. So I'll start on the side walls with the lime plaster, and then hopefully once that's done, the clay will be ready to do this wall. So everything I've seen online about plaster talks about the base coat, and it'll have some kind of fiber, traditionally like a plant fiber or horsehair. The prepackaged stuff now I think has like synthetic fibers, but it'll have like a binder fiber in it. This doesn't, but it's only like a centimeter thick. So I'm just gonna do it how it was done before here, which is the sand and lime. Again, all the stuff online, there's a top coat that's generally like 1 to 2 millimeters thick mixed with a fine sand. And this seems to be less than a millimeter thick and just pure lime. So I'll do that as well and see how well that works. And then I'll just paint over all of it with whitewash like I did the outside of the house. So now it's time to mix up the plaster, and I will say pretty much everything I've learned about plastering is from the channel Make Do Grow. They're a really great channel restoring an old farmhouse. I think it's southeast of here a little bit, on the other side of the mountains. It's great having them as a resource because it's a lot of the same materials, and it's nice to have them do all the trial and error so I don't have to do it myself and can just learn from them. So a big shout out to Make Do Grow. Thank you for all you do. So this will be lime plaster. I'm using hydrated lime, so for simplicity, whenever I say lime, I mean hydrated lime. A little lime refresher, there's 4 types. There's quick lime, hydrated lime, hydraulic lime, and agricultural lime. I think agricultural lime is just crushed up limestone, and then quick lime is crushed up limestone that is burned, so the carbon dioxide releases from the calcium carbonate and you get calcium oxide. Hydrated lime is if you react that with water, and then hydraulic lime is that with, I think, some other minerals mixed in, so it's kind of more similar to cement. It'll set in water instead of hydrated lime and quick lime are air set. I prefer the hydrated lime because it's just a lot safer and easier to work with because you don't have to do the extra step of hydrating it. And since it's already reacted, it's much less reactive with water, so you don't have to worry about chemical burns and all that nearly as much. So the lime is a very light and fluffy powder, so once I add the water, it'll shrink down in volume. So I'll do 3 scoops of lime, which should equal 2 scoops of putty. And since I'm using coarse sand, I'll do a 3-to-1 ratio. And the reasoning behind that is because they say a third of the volume of the sand is air between the grains. So for the coarse sand, it's about 3-to-1, and it's less for finer sand. And then I just got a bag of sand at the store because it was less than 10 cents a kilo, and it's already washed and cleaned and sorted, so it's a lot easier than doing it myself with sand from the river. So I was being pretty conservative with the water and just adding a little bit at a time till I got the right consistency, which was that of about like Greek yogurt or soft serve ice cream. It seems like pretty much everything you read about plastering with lime is once you make the putty, it has to age for several months to several years. The only reasoning I could find for that seemed to be that in case there are any chunks of unhydrated lime, it gave it a chance to hydrate, but since I'm already working with hydrated lime, it seems pretty unnecessary. I did find some research papers that compared fresh lime putty with various ages, even up to over 10 years old, and the biggest difference seemed to be that the older it was, the faster it set, as well as a difference in the size and shape of the crystal structure, but none of it seemed critical or anything like that. So especially for this application, just fresh seems fine. And I'm pretty sure Make Do Grow tested aged versus non-aged and didn't notice any difference. And it definitely doesn't seem worth to wait a few months every time you need to make a new batch. So now that's all mixed up. It made about half a bucket, which is what I was hoping for. I'm not sure exactly how much I'll need, but if I need more, it'll be easy to make another batch. So everything should be dry and set, so I'll take this down and get it out of the way, and fingers crossed that it worked. So it definitely seems like it worked pretty well. Definitely way better than it used to be. So I'll start here with this patch just because I've never done plastering before, so this seems like a nice little good practice area. So first I'll just spray it down to get it wet and let it sit because the brick will probably absorb quite a bit of water. So that actually did absorb quite a bit of water, but since plaster is breathable, it'll be able to dry out and won't be an issue. So it seems like it's a pretty good consistency. Might be a little bit too watery, but it should be fine. So as you can see, it's pretty rough, but once it sets a little bit, I can smooth it out with a sponge, and then it'll get the float coat of just pure lime, and then paint on top of it. So it should be pretty smooth. So half a bucket was almost the perfect amount. Got most of it done. There's that little patch in the corner, and then right there. So there's the issue of this. I think for now I'll just leave it like this, and then once I do the bathroom that's on the other side and get rid of the pipes, I think it should be pretty easy to just fill in this little corner. So for the clay plaster for this wall, the clay I got is just the dirt here, but it has a lot of rocks in it, so I liquefied it to make straining the rocks out easier. And when I did that, it was like 95, like 35 Celsius, and super hot and dry. So I figured it would dry out real quick, but then it rained, and then it's been real cloudy since then, and a lot cooler, and it even looks like it's gonna rain again, so it's still pretty soupy. So I think this will have to wait till next week, because by the time I have to edit this video, I don't think it'll be ready. So I'll just stick with the lime plaster for this week and then do the clay next week. So I'm back and it's set up enough to smooth with a sponge. I tested it out a little bit and you probably can't really see it here, but I'll try from a different angle. So you can kind of see that this side is smoother and this side is rougher. So I'll just do that for all the new plaster. So typically for this process you would use a sponge float instead of just a sponge, but at the hardware store there was so many different kinds that I was a little overwhelmed and didn't know, because they were all different textures and porosities and stiffness and everything, so I didn't know which one to get. So I just went with the cheapest option, which was just a sponge. And since it's not like a whole wall, it's easy to stay flush with the rest of the wall, so there's not a need to press down like hills and valleys and stuff. So I figured it'd be a good test to see if I actually needed an actual sponge float or not. So this still hasn't fully cured yet. It's hard, but it's still gray. Once it cures, it'll turn white as it pulls the carbon dioxide out of the air and just reforms calcium carbonate. I couldn't find anything if it is okay to do the final layer over it before it's fully cured. It seems like it would be okay because it's such a thin layer, but so I'll just let this cure for a few more days, and by that time the clay wall should be done, and I can just do everything all at once. You can see some of the smaller areas have already turned white, so I think the rest of it should be ready in a few days. So I'm just about done editing this week's video, so I just wanted to hop on at the end real quick and say that last week's video has made 61 euros and 24 cents so far. So I'm gonna round that up to 100 and donate it to UNICEF, because I was reading about how one of their aid convoys was denied entry at a checkpoint to deliver their aid. So they'll get 100 euros now, which is enough for 3 medical kits and some change left over. So, and I want to say thanks everybody for watching, and especially everybody that hung around for this many months that I was gone, but back to it now, and I'll see y'all next week. Ciao.